Okay, we are recording. Welcome, everyone. I will call the meeting to order at 6:34. And let me look at my other screen for the agenda. Let's see, changes, additions to the agenda. I recommend that because of the amount of time that it's going to take to discuss, that we move the school reopening to the top of our agenda.
I think that's a good idea. If there's no objection.
Sounds good to me.
No, okay, thank you, Scott. Okay. And let's see, were there any other changes? Nope. Okay, so public comments on items not related to the agenda. Hearing and seeing none, I will take a motion to approve the minutes from May 26th and June 22nd.
Colleen moves.
Is there a second? Scott seconds. Were there any corrections, changes? To any of the minutes? Does anyone wish to elaborate or?
Look good to me.
All those in favor of approving the minutes from May 26th and June 22nd, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? They have been approved. Thank you, Diane. So let us go into the conversation of school reopening. At our last meeting, there had been considerable conversation. The state issued some information and we had a task force working on a plan, and the climate has changed just a little bit, and I will let David elaborate.
Yeah, so first of all, I'm glad so many people are on the call. I know that, you know, a lot of folks have been working hard on this reopening plan, and quite frankly, I think it's a good reopening plan. I think what sort of caught everyone's attention this weekend was the email, or excuse me, the letter from Bridget Neese to her community in Waterbury, Duxbury, Harwood Union. And I sent that to everybody. I just wanted to let folks know that I think this is the sentiment of a lot of superintendents around the state, that while we have a plan, while the plan is I think a good plan, I think it's consistent with the state's directive to do something that has a hybrid, an in-person, and as well as a hybrid ring to it. It's there. But I just wanted to make sure that this board understood that the administrative team will do their best to implement that plan. But you know, in terms of the unpredictables, there's just no guarantee. We have collected some data through a survey, which we started, you know, the deadline for that survey was 12 noon today. Angie can share some of what she's gotten back on the survey. We've done a very, very preliminary analysis of that survey, and it talked about whether parents felt comfortable given the plan that was presented of sending their students back. And also it had some transportation questions on them. Many of you are parents of students in our schools, so you may or may not have taken that survey. I thought the response was good. We're going to reach out to those parents who did not respond because we'd like almost 100% response if we could. So we may start making some calls this week to get even more information. But not surprisingly on that survey, and I looked at some of the responses today, not surprisingly, there are still a fair number of people who are undecided, that really have not made a decision. And I think that was part of what Superintendent Neese was saying, that there's so much that continues to be unpredictable about this in terms of the way the community feels, the way the parents feel, the way the students will react, the way the staff feels. Because as I've said to you right from the very beginning, there's the science to the virus, and then there is also the emotional implications of the virus. And everybody, as they look at their family and they look at their circumstances, will make their own decision. So that being said, I thought we should have a discussion tonight. Also, and I think this is important, not unlike what's been happening at the Agency of Education and through the governor's office, there were a couple of pronouncements last week that sort of shook the apple cart a little bit. And basically what happened was the governor and the Secretary of Education delegated the responsibility to the local communities and the local boards to determine how much, if any, in-person instruction would occur. That essentially they authorized the boards to make a final decision right up until the day school opens as to whether or not they feel they have the capacity, staff-wise, number of students, resources, sanitization, custodial staff, to really open those doors safely. And I felt that, in some ways, nice that you've got that authority, but also it's another way to kick the can down to the local districts to say, you make the final decision. We're not going to make the final decision. And I think that was disappointing to a lot of superintendents and to Superintendent Neese. And she references that in the letter that she sent to her Duxbury and Waterbury community. So I want to make sure as we start this discussion tonight that nobody on this call or at this meeting feels that I don't think we've got a good plan. I think we've got a good plan. Are there details that need to be worked out? Yes. Are the principals working hard at getting those details worked out? The answer is yes. Do they and can they predict how the community will react in the last hour as we get ready to enter? Can they predict what will happen when those staff members show up at the front door and maybe have one final panic attack and won't walk in? Do we know how many ultimately ADA accommodation requests we'll get? Do we know how many students will actually show up? We don't know any of that, and we can't predict any of that. But I still think it's a good plan, and I think it's a doable plan, providing all the other pieces fall into place. I think what I'm looking for tonight, after a healthy discussion, is I don't think, we should, at the 7th hour or the 11th hour, try to have 4 board meetings or 3 board meetings or supervisory union board and make a last minute decision. I would like to have, the decision. I'd like the board to authorize either the executive committee, which is made up of the board chairs, or the executive committee in consultation with the superintendent, or vice versa, the superintendent in consultation with the executive committee, to make that final decision as we get closer to school opening. And who knows, maybe the state, when the state looks at all of these hybrid plans and different plans and realizes that some kids are going to be in school 1 day and some kids are going to be in school 5 days and some kids may be in school no days, maybe they'll say, no mas. We can't start like this. And maybe they'll back up a little bit. But so far, they haven't really done that. So after we discuss this, I really would like some sort of authority given to the executive committee or to me to sort of make that call in the moment when we get to September 7th, September 4th, August 29th, and we realize that we've got a lot of kids who aren't coming and a lot of staff who say they just can't make that happen. So that's it from me. And Amy, can you see everybody on the screen?
I can see most. Elizabeth, and then Beth.
So Amy, sorry. sorry, somebody needs to let the public in. There's people trying to get in, I think, and it is a public meeting, correct?
Right, there's something funky about the link on the agenda. I got on through the calendar.
Yeah, I know when somebody from the public wants to sign on, and we've had a couple already tonight, I usually get a message since I set up the link to admit them, and I have not had that request from anybody except there were a couple of people who asked to be admitted, but I don't see anybody else asking to be admitted.
Okay. There are a couple.
Yeah.
They sent emails.
Yeah.
That they're waiting to get on.
They're waiting to get in. They're not getting they normally get the little let them in, but they're not getting it right now.
That's interesting. Who are they sending the emails to me?
Let me take a look.
The link on the agenda is not working. Sorry to interrupt. I just went to click on it and it says no one's there. So I think the only link that's working is on the calendar.
Okay, so let me try to, I've got a couple of emails here. Let me respond to those folks.
If you copy and paste that link into another, or if you click on it, it won't work. It does not work. It sends you into your own little world. I was
So if I,
there, it was quiet, it was peaceful, but it didn't get what I was.
okay, so do you think the only way to do it is to send the actual calendar invite? I will do it.
That would work.
Okay.
I will do it.
Yeah, and I think, so the other question, and I know Elizabeth, you asked, so kind of then going to the data. So it would be helpful, to see the data results, because while, there's an N of whatever, considering, I don't know, it was sent out last Tuesday, in the middle of summer, I don't know how much data you got back within, 5 days, 6 days. Angie, did we get a lot of data back? Like how many surveys total?
We got about 500 plus surveys back. There was some duplication of surveys. Something weird happened. People were able to submit another response. So I'd get a response at 6 o'clock in the evening and then another one at 10, and it was the exact same response. So anyway, I have a slideshow prepared.
Okay.
The comments are really great. And I'm trying to make PDFs of those comments, but I have to take out all identifiable information. And that's taking me a little bit longer because I'm being fine-tooth comb. So if you're ready, I will start presenting that.
And do you have it broken down by school district by any chance? Those 500?
Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Okay, just a second.
Can I just ask a quick question first? While you do that, David, have you been in contact with our surrounding supervisory unions and districts? And I have heard, I think it was mentioned on the Vermont Edition program today, which, if none of you realize, VPR is doing a series on this week. And they had the first installation today, but they've been talking about having regional agreements on whether to open or not. And I wondered whether you've explored that or not, Dave.
Yeah, the question was, have the regional superintendents explored a regional calendar? Was that the question? I'm sorry, Elizabeth.
Well, have you been in contact with the supervisory unions that touch ours?
Yes.
And have you had any kind of discussion about whether you're going to coordinate whether to keep open or close? And also, this is really pertinent to Heartland and Weathersfield, who have high school students that are going all over the place. So it's something to really be conscientious about.
Yes.
Just to add to that, David, the other part of that is, you're right, Heartland and Weathersfield, are sending kids, every which direction. And I also understand, even though we are, whatever the recommendation is for the high school students, Hartford is still open in the afternoon. So those students will be going off to the Hartford program. after they leave. So some students will end their day at 11:30 in the high school, and others will continue on their merry day at Hartford. So it just seems a little bit inconsistent, but
Yeah.
curious.
Well, with respect to that, no high school student ends their day at 11:30. They all have remote classes in the afternoon. And I think what you mean is all but the tech center students will end their in-person day, right? Yeah, right. I get it. Yeah. So they'll all be going to school. They're just not going to school in the same way. You're right. To answer Elizabeth's question, yes, the regional superintendents, so the Southeast regional superintendents, which all of our border districts are part of, Woodstock, Hartford, Springfield. We meet every Thursday for an hour to an hour and a half. And yes, we have made tentative pledge that if we'll either all decide we're all going to go completely remote, or we'll all go with our various plans. The plans don't all line up completely. Some of them aren't even at a stage where they've announced their plans yet. I think Woodstock has. I think Springfield's very close, but I don't think they have yet. But we are in constant communication with them about that need to try to do something together. At one point, we thought we might try to pull off a regional plan, but again, we have 8 different collective bargaining agreements and a whole different approaches to it. Not all school boards, are aligned. So it looked like that was going to be too hard to do, but we will certainly keep in touch with each other. So,
yeah, I mean, I guess when we go through the data, right? When we go through the data, I guess this is my point. At least, again, I know I've said it before here. K through 8 can look very different than the high school, but even the high school, right? You're right. You're going to have some kids that go in for 2 hours, 3 hours, then go home and do the rest of their day. You're going to have some that go in for 2 or 3 hours, go to Hartford, come back the next day, go into the. It feels like the rhyme and reason. There's just something's not quite gelling for me. It's just feeling very inconsistent of, we are saying they have to do this, they have to be in these pods, they have to be in the building, they have to do this, but yet then, right, half of them go off. I don't know what the percentage is now. Oh, and by the way, right, the other half go off and they're going to do anything anyway. So that's the piece that I struggle with at the high school level.
So think of it as the personalized learning kind of.
Oh, no. Yeah, I'm not arguing that.
Just a sec. Yeah. So the kids who are going to Hartford, they would be going to Hartford anyway, whether the other kids are doing their online.
Yep.
And there has to be some degree of personal responsibility that all of the students have to take on. And it might be a burden for some.
I'm not concerned about that. I'm concerned about, we're trying to say this is safe. We're trying to say, right, we're doing this in pods and this and that and the other thing. But then yet we're sending, which I agree, we should be sending them off if that's what they want to do. But you can't say it's both, we're solving both things, because we're not. And that's that's where I'm like, put them all.
I understand. I get it. I get it. And I think this is part, because of this allowed inconsistency, that I think that, it's been every district for themselves. And the Hartford Tech Center is part of the Hartford School District, and they're going to make their own decisions. Think about this for a minute, Beth. The opposite could occur if our seniors go to Hartford in the morning. So let's say there's a COVID case at Hartford Tech Center, and those seniors can't go to Hartford for 5 days, 14 days. The rest of the seniors will be in school, while those seniors who go to Hartford will be remote, because Hartford's closed down. So much of this is local that it just makes your head hurt. You know what I mean? It's real. And we're being asked to make decisions. And I think this was Bridget Neese's point. We're being asked to make decisions that are all about immunology and all about viral spread and all about disease. And I didn't take any of those courses in Superintendent 101. Right?
And I did.
It did not happen.
And I did them all, which is why, just put them all in a room together, because you know what? They're all together right now as I sit here tonight.
Yeah, they're
and
probably right out in front.
my children are.
They're outside your house. Are they in your basement? That's just not okay.
Not all of them. Not all of them.
But I bet some of them are. Yeah, I get it. I see Beth Roy's hand up.
Yeah, I think similar to what Beth Carter was saying is that, you know, what's happening with all the after school programming and the recs? You know, are they even opening, and what does that look like? Because if all the after school programs are opening and all the kids from every pod go to the rec, then
yeah, what's that all about?
Matter.
Right.
So it's all, so as to how can we potentially, I know we can't control cross SU, but perhaps we can look a little closer, you know, just within our SU and what we can control.
Yeah, and I know that we have had conversations with the rec departments. I know Christine, who I see online at Heartland, has had conversations with the rec departments. And Christine, do you want to speak to that? Not that you're asking specifically, but go ahead, Christine.
Right. So in my preliminary conversations with John at the rec, I mean, they're and this is not for sure, but they're talking of opening with a limited amount of students and keeping them outside and shortening their day at the rec as well. So limited number outside until at least winter.
I was going to say that could look interesting on December 24th, but or February 5th. But yeah, I think it's great. And I've been in touch with Tom Marsh at Windsor. Here's the problem. You know, Weathersfield doesn't have a rec. So Weathersfield really is struggling with what's going to happen at 12:30 with their kids. But that's that battle between schooling and childcare, right? I mean, I think that this is, you know, I saw a meme the other day that you can have remote instruction and employment simultaneously, but it's going to have to be with a lot of cooperation from businesses and employers and childcares and the state, and I just don't think we're prepared for that. Now, the other part, Beth, about the cross-contamination, kids go to the rec, they start mixing up with other kids, they come back to us the next day. It's exactly why we do. It's just what Beth's talking about. There are high school kids right now, I'm sure, all playing basketball you know, and there's probably 10 of them, 15 of them, 20 of them, you know, but we're going to do that health check every day. We're going to ask those questions. We're going to take their temperature, and that's the best that we can do. And here's the thing, while they're all playing basketball, we're not insuring them. Our insurance company really doesn't care. Our insurance company only cares when they cross over that threshold and they're in our building. That's when our insurance company says, hang on tight, because our insurance company, Visbit, is expecting that should there be a case, it'll be a lawsuit. That's the bottom line, because somebody won't have had the mask on, or somebody won't have been distanced, or somebody didn't accurately report their temperature. And so Visbit is going crazy trying to keep track of all of this because they insure us, and they've got deep pockets, but not that deep. And they're nervous too as we go forward. Amy, and then I don't know, did you want to do Angie?
Yeah.
Amy?
Colleen, yeah, Angie, just a sec. Colleen had a question on what are the benefits of closing at 12:30.
Yeah, so that was a long discussion, and Colleen, I take it that's from Colleen Spence, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, good. Colleen, great question, because that's of the 20 emails, and I did not get, and Bridget's got more kids in her district, I did not get 100 emails. I got about 20 emails, but I also saw the comments on the survey. There were a lot of comments about that, you know, that early release. I mean, I think that's.
I've gotten a lot of feedback from parents as well, David.
Yeah, and the thought, the thought on the shortened day, and remember, it's only a reopening plan, right? It is not a year-long plan. It was, how do we gradually go into this and get a sense of how kids respond? It was not necessarily a medical decision, although less time in contact is less possibilities of transmission, I guess. But it was much more about the social and emotional safety of both the staff and the students, because we haven't yet taken a group of 7-year-olds, put them 6 feet apart, told them to face front, put a mask on them, and say to them, look, we're in this room all day, or we're going to go outside for a few minutes. We don't know how they're going to react to that. And so we didn't want to do that for 7.5 hours. We wanted to do that for 4.5. It'll probably be, by the time we get them there, and it's probably about 5 hours. So it's not, I've gotten a couple of emails with what's 2 hours. Good. Well, it's not 2 hours. They get there between 8 and 8:30. They leave between 12:30 and 1. So there's going to be some staggered dismissals and some staggered arrivals. But I'll tell you, it was not a decision based on immunology as much as it was on psychology, that we only think they can take so much of that initially. Once we get good at it, or once we move to a step 3, when we can loosen up the masks and get rid of some of the social distancing, I think we can start to go back to normal. But it could go the other way around.
I think that makes sense. It might be a good thing to communicate to
Yeah.
parents.
Yeah.
I have one other thing that I wanted to ask about that kind of veers off of this topic. You were talking before about how the responsibility has fallen over to the boards to make the decision, go, no go decision. I think what you were saying makes sense. We probably should approve a smaller group to make the decision. I don't know who or what, but it did come up in conversation with a couple of people. For me, I would like an opportunity to approve our plan as a board, even if we don't have the authority to disapprove a plan, just to be a part of being being in this with you.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
hope that that's something that we can take up as individual boards or even as an SU, if we feel comfortable doing that.
Yeah,
And if
no,
we don't, then I hope we can talk about it and talk
Yeah, I
through
think
some things.
I think that's a great idea, Colleen. And whether we do it at this board level or do it at our individual boards, it's just that it's complicated. And the actual statute, up until the governor made that announcement, that authority rested, pretty much.
I think the authority really has been pushed down and down and down, and it really is sitting now with the parents to some degree. I have feelings about that. We all have feelings about that, but it is what it is. But I think,
agree.
I think as a group of superintendents and principals and plan makers and boards, maybe we could go in as a united front.
Yeah.
I don't think I'd feel comfortable telling a parent that I didn't have anything to do with the plan. I don't know what to tell you. Like, I want to be able to tell them that, I participated. I let you know that a 12:30 end date is really bothering, really going to be difficult for parents. And so that's my 2 cents.
I think that's fine. I like that idea. I certainly, I shudder at the reality that if the board, like you said, if the board decided they didn't support the plan, okay, good luck. I don't know what happens then, but
yeah, I don't want to set us up for failure in any way. I just think that you need our backing. We need your backing, really, is how I feel it. And I want to feel as good as I can about the plan. We're not going to get this right. We're not going to get it all right. We're going to get as much of it right as we can get.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And the administration and the task force, because there are people outside the administration on that task force, have felt the backing. We felt the support of the boards right from the time I first met with the board chairs a month ago. That was a tough meeting, but I have felt that level of support. But I think a formal vote would be great if we could pull that off, and we should talk about that.
Okay, can we hear from Angie now on the data that she has?
Are you going to share your screen, Angie? Yes, she is, and she's going to turn it on.
Yes, I will, if I unmute myself.
Sometimes
Angie, I want through the concern list yet.
I might end up just reading out a few of those.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't want to. I would rather err on the side of caution than post something that had a kid's name in there, or family identifiable. So here's the survey. So the survey I have not turned off the survey, and since 5 o'clock, 3 people were on. So there's 3 more surveys in there. So that's good. So that's the responses are still coming in. So this gives you just shout out if you want me to stop or if I'm going too fast. So like I said before, this number up here, the 558 responses, really more like 500-ish. I don't know what was happening with those duplicate responses, and that's the number of parents who responded. I did not have time to check the data for duplicates of, if both parents responded. I didn't add to the survey that it was one per family, so both parents could have weighed in. So when I collated the data, there's some places later, I had gone through and deleted what were duplicate responses, and they were duplicate like exactly the same all the way across. So are there any questions on this screen? You can see. And that's like Albert Bridge, that's 35 responses, not necessarily for 35 students. It could have been for 50 students or, depending on the size of their family. So the section on families returning to school started with just this question: agree, disagree, or not sure. Yes, no, undecided. I plan to send my children to in-person schools. Almost 63% said yes. So this shows you a better picture of the responses broken down by school, the yes, no's, and undecideds. I'm going to give you a moment just to kind of digest that. It's a lot of numbers. You can hone in on the school that you're interested in, or you can look at the SU total on the right side.
And Angie, did you have this broken down in Windsor, right, ABS by high school versus K through 8, out of curiosity?
No, because the way that, no, I did not. I just went with Windsor at this point.
Can we look at that by school, or is that possible?
The problem is that the data has identifiable information in it, so I have to clean it up before I can share that out. So to go to the spreadsheet where the data is and break it out by school, I can get that to you. I don't want to go into the data with my screen now.
That I completely understand that, but it's just, again, like I've said from probably day one, a high school population is, in my mind, a different discussion than a K through 8 population.
So maybe before the end of tonight's meeting, I'll be able to share that now. Okay. Any other questions? So then we asked the transportation. This is of the people who said yes, they would transport their kids. So there's two of these slides. It's a little confusing. Right. So 74% said they would transport the kids. 26% said no. And then we asked the question later on for the folks that said they were undecided, and this is the responses of the undecided people. So we still have 20% of this group and then 20% of the previous group. I'm sorry, that's confusing, but it gives you an idea. About a fourth of our families are saying they would not provide transportation. And then there was some feedback that we should have asked a question about children who walk to school. And that was good feedback. We should have asked a question about children who walk to school.
Okay, Angie?
Yeah.
Beth had a question from a previous slide, Beth Roy.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I just said like the whole, are you ready to bring your kids back to school kind of thing? Are you willing to? That was a really hard question to answer in the sense of, right now in my mind, it was I'm sending my kids to public school or I'm applying to start doing homeschooling through the state. Like there was no.
That was why we had the undecided.
Yeah, so it was very like, but that wasn't like, because I'm not, like it just wasn't given that option, because like in my mind it's like, oh, is online learning an option if I just keep my kids home and I don't have to apply through the state? Then maybe I wouldn't send my, so there just was, it was a little unclear. So I just had a hard time not even saying undecided, because that was like undecided to be undecided.
I think what you're demonstrating, Beth, is how uncertain this is for many people.
How undecided, but it's a good point, Beth. And we'll talk once we're done going through the data. We'll talk a little bit about, we've got more information about remote possibilities and what we can offer. I mean, I think there's a commitment on the part of the boards that I've heard, that we want to be able to provide something, without having a parent have to apply to the AOE. So that's why we'll probably have to do this survey at least one more time, if not two more times, because we've got to get that plan out to folks so they can see what it is, how they access it, who's going to teach it, so we'll work on that, because I think we need that remote option in this. Next.
If this is
you still with us, Angie?
If this is a statistically represented, if this is enough responses, so say this represents about 1/3 of our students, and so if we can think that 25% really need to know more before they can make a decision, then I think we can use that number. That's helpful to know that. So the transportation question, again, I think we asked if they were willing to transport children that live near them. And there is a lot of fear, but we did have about 25% again that said, yes, they would. And many people in their concerns said, I can't transport my kids. I got to be to work at X time and I'm there all day. So I'm going to have to rely on families and friends and neighbors. So I think there's a real need for this, and how we can help facilitate that, I think, will be important. So these out of this section, I'm sorry, before I go forward, does anybody have any questions about the transportation questions? There was more detail in that, but it was more or less logistical detail for the schools to know. The homeschool option, these next couple slides are from the folks that said yes to the or no, they would not be sending their kids back. And these are the top 5 reasons that they were choosing homeschool. My child's physical health, my child's emotional health, my child's learning style, our family situation, such as having a family member with a high risk, and my anxiety about the school's ability to keep my child safe. So this is the percentages. I thought I had the percents on there. So this is about, this line right here is 60%. So most of these are between 40 and 60% of the respondents chose these. They could choose more than one too.
So Angie, when they talked about a homeschooling option, they weren't talking about the AOE homeschooling option, right? They were just talking about.
This question was.
That comes up later.
Right.
Okay.
This was for the people that said they would not send their kids back. It's not for the undecided. So then the next question
said,
well, what is your plan? Okay. And this is helpful because this says about 25% have filed a home study plan with the Vermont Agency of Education. And over 60% want to have support from their local school, such as remote learning options. So that's helpful.
Not surprising. That's helpful.
Then
any questions on that one?
Yeah, these are the people that seem certainly more certain about that they would not send their. I don't think there's any circumstances under which they would send their kids back unless there was a vaccine and COVID had been eliminated. So the 140 folks said that they would be they are undecided. So about 25%. And the question was, what are your top 3 concerns? So I tried to collate these. Basically, they came in about 3 categories: health risks for the child and or family members, the fear of the child coming back to the home, being asymptomatic and exposing high-risk family members, the logistics, the hours of the day. There were several comments about, this doesn't work for the working family. I can't see how I can do this. Transportation is going to be an issue. Childcare is going to be an issue. So that's what I call the logistics. And then the safety. My child will not wear a mask. My child is very social and will struggle with the distancing. And then they're just worried about the ability to enforce the rules to keep the children from interacting in a way that is unsafe, in particular to the social distancing. And I PDF with you once once I'm certain the data is good, it's clean. Any questions? Okay, I think that's it.
Yeah, I mean, and the only, I guess, right, what would be helpful, and when you do slice it out by the high school versus K through 8 and 1-0, like if sure. I don't want to create a lot of work for you, but I think
no, I don't think it's that hard.
Yeah, I think they're important because I would think right on that last one, right, well, childcare shouldn't be an issue of 9 through 12. The health would be the only reason that they don't want to send anybody back, and then right August 1st, right, it's required that we all wear masks when we can't social distance in the state of Vermont. So I'd just be curious what the breakout is by the high school on that one as well, because I still from at least the vote or the discussions, I would prefer we put the high school in longer than the 2 hours or whatever it is, David, because it's just they're just a different group of kids, and they're out there being social and social distancing and wearing masks and can wear masks and have more control than probably some little ones for sure.
Mm-hmm. Do we want to talk? Go ahead.
Jean Marie asked about the data. Jean Marie, the spreadsheets will be shared with each principal. They're sorted out by school.
Yeah.
I have a question.
And I was going to say and Scott, sure, that I see him, but the other thing about separating it out, the only thing that's going to take just a little bit of work is we have to go in by name almost and grade level, because that's how parents reported the data. So I think we can do. And I also want to make sure that we talk a little bit about the remote options, because as you can see, more than 20% have already applied to the AOE for homeschooling, but they don't know what our plan is yet. Maybe they'll continue to do that.
Right, that's 20% of the respondents.
Of the respondents,
it's just 20%.
20% of the respondents, right? So. And we'll also talk about a plan to increase the number of respondents. But Scott, did you have a question?
Yes, Angie. Thank you, Dave. Angie,
but did we get a sense of how many didn't respond?
No. Angie, is there any way in the survey data to figure out the free and reduced lunch numbers and how they correspond with? Okay, nothing like that.
No, I did not collect that information, and it would, those lists, that information is so guarded. Only a few people in each building, if more than one person knows it. It's highly confidential. So there's no way to cross-reference that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we could have asked them to self-report. They could have self-reported, but we didn't do that.
Perhaps the specifics are confidential, but I think it's understood in the SU among board members and perhaps among everyone that I think Heartland is at the top or near the top of numbers for free and reduced students in the supervisory union at a district level. I mean, per district, at a percentage per district. Please correct me if I'm wrong, Christine, but I think that's, and I think that one of the first slides showed that Heartland was near the top for families that were planning to go back to school. Can we see that again?
Yes. So of the 128 Heartland responses, 76 said yes. So more than half.
Yeah, we know. This will be important in days to come.
Yeah. So Angie, do we know how many have not responded? How many did not respond? Because I know we're going to make an effort to contact parents who did not respond. Do we have any idea? I think you said a third of the children responded.
I mean, we can figure that out, but it's going to take time. to figure that out. Our principals and their administrative assistants need to go through the data and say this family, this family, this family, and I got responses from, at least one response was, I no longer have a child at your school. Please take me off your email list. So, once we have gotten the data from all of the families, we'll have a better sense of that. I imagine that principals, their administrative assistants who know their FRL counts could look at the numbers and tell them what percentage said what.
Yeah, they'll know.
That is helpful to know.
They'll know. So just so everybody knows, that is the plan. The plan is to go to our administrative assistants, cross-check these names, see who did not respond, and we're going to start making phone calls. So we want to get up to at least an 80-90% response rate if we can. It's going to be a lot of work, but I think the principals are committed. Also, we need to know who's on the buses, who's not on the buses. That's critical information. Sorry, Scott, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah, no problem, Dave. Thank you. I'm not criticizing Angie. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I don't have students in school, but I think in just a worldly sense that it means a lot to me to understand that Heartland has a high number of free and reduced qualifying students and families, and what looks like a desire to go back to school. Thank you.
There might be a correlation there, so I think it's interesting to look at how we support. It helps us to know how to support our families, for sure.
I talked with HR today. This is another. When I sent out my email to the staff describing the plan, we asked for anybody who may be contemplating an ADA accommodation, and they'd really prefer not to come back. And we have a protocol for that, and we asked them to notify HR. I checked in with HR today. Right now, we have four staff members, one paraprofessional, and 3 teachers who have at least instigated that process. Now, as we get closer, or as people get more nervous, or, I don't know what'll happen, whether that'll increase. But right now, we have one paraprofessional and 3 teachers who have requested some sort of an ADA exemption, so they would not have to come in. That doesn't mean the exemption will be approved, right? There's a lot of protocol involved in approving that type of an exemption. So, we may have 3, we may have none. So that's kind of where we are. So part of the problem with offering remote was the idea of, whether or not we would just, live, stream the classrooms with a Chromebook. It didn't seem very user-friendly. Or if we'd have this cadre of teachers that, wanted to be remote by ADA accommodation, maybe that would be enough to cover those remote students. But I don't know. I'm not convinced that's going to happen. But we have just recently run across a plan that VTVLC is putting together around a statewide remote plan. And the person who probably has heard the most about this is Christine Bourne. I don't know, Christine, I keep putting you on the spot, but do you want to describe this state plan?
Yeah, I can. And I think Angie did a webinar today, so she can chime in. I heard about the plan. Well, we got a survey actually from VTVLC a couple weeks back. And then I asked about it at a state principal meeting a week ago. And the way that it was described to me is it's an option for teachers that are have accommodations to work remotely, and they are partnered with students that can't come to school for whatever reason, for health reasons or because of their comfort level. And there needs to be a process to determine that. And VTVLC will try their hardest, their best to match the students in your district with teachers in your district or your SU. And if that doesn't match up, then they will match students to a statewide teacher in Vermont with the correct certification. It is free to all districts for the entire year next year. The cost is the cost of enrolling in their program to become a certified remote, online teacher, which is, I think, $3,600 per teacher. When I asked at the meeting I was at, the Vermont Principal Association director said that at this point, it would be allowed under ADA accommodations to require those teachers that can't come back or for medical reasons to take that course. Because that was one of my questions. Can we make them do that? And it's a quick course. They would finish it over the course of the year. They would have their certification and be teaching, in tandem at the same time. The curriculum they have a 6 through 12 online curriculum already completed. It's through it begins with C. Angie, help me.
I can't remember, but it's basically all the course is developed.
All the coursework is there.
All the coursework is developed, and teachers do have the ability to adjust that to what to reflect the values of their particular school or system.
And they have recently partnered, and so there is now access to a K-5 curriculum as well, online curriculum that is already created and out there. So our admin team meets with Jeff from BTVLC tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock to, gather more information and get our questions answered. I think it's dependent on districts or SUs within the state. I mean, they need a pool of teachers to be able to do this. So it will depend on their survey results. But Angie, if you have more information.
Yeah, ironically enough, they have more than enough math teachers, Christine.
Interesting.
They send one our way.
They do need health and PE teachers. That's where the real shortage is. And then ELA, science and social studies in that order. There are some interesting things about it that, at first I was like, oh, this could be a great solution, and it can be a great solution for many. You have to be willing to get the online teaching certification, and it's a 1-year commitment. Yeah. So and not everybody who might want to teach from home or be qualified to teach from home would be a good online teacher. So we have to be thinking about that too, about if it's the best fit for folks, and it might not be. So it's an interesting model because Vermont Virtual Learning Cooperative has always offered some learning support to high school students in the high schools in Vermont. They offered that last spring when we went to remote, and I don't know if I don't know of any classroom teachers who took advantage of that. I did not facilitate that for anybody. That's what I know. So, and I don't know if any of our students have ever taken a Vermont Virtual Learning Cooperative course. So now that they have the K-5 curriculum, it does make them far more flexible and able to meet the demands. But Christine's right that it does depend on the number of teachers. One full-time online teacher is the equivalent, if I have this right, equivalent of 5 classroom teachers. So I think they need far fewer teachers to accomplish the same thing that you would for in-person, I think is what he was saying. So.
Did we have, I think 10 teachers during our remote time access of VTVLC coursework?
There were about 8 or 9 of us, maybe 10 of us, that took the online teaching best practices workshop, which was a 3-week course that was facilitated. And so we had a number of staff that were interested in improving their online teaching practices. The course, the 9-credit course, is a graduate level course. And at the end of that, it can lead teachers to transcript review for their license, because that is an endorsement area, online teaching. Thank you, Anne.
One of the things at the high school level
that her son took a course in geometry through Vermont Virtual Learning Cooperative, and it was successful.
Scott, you had a question?
Yeah, thanks, Amy. I get I think that the virtual learning cooperative is an example of offerings, perhaps of curriculum that I just want to say that I'm concerned that we have a curriculum director we have a direction. The SU board has a direction on curriculum for years, and it concerns me that in an effort to solve a problem this summer, that we fall prey to some entrepreneurial efforts around Vermont and the nation. I would want to say, just to put it out there, that I hope that these whatever distance learning options, perhaps that new options that we're willing to look at, that they are in line with our SU's curriculum direction now.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Scott. I mean, I think some of this is around capacity, and we're just holding this, and that's why we're meeting with Jeff in the morning. We're just holding this as an option, and we'll have to vet that curriculum. One thing I heard the boards say clearly the week that we had the Mount Scottney board, then the Wethersfield board, then the Heartland board, the thing I heard distinctly from all three boards is that we want to be able to provide something for those parents who want to stay remote, because we don't want to lose them to AOE land, or we don't want them to not be part of our school community. I think we should still be checking in with them. Just because they're part of this VTVLC, it doesn't mean that we won't be checking in with them on a regular basis, maybe helping them or assisting them. We're going to have some support staff and paraprofessionals and, teachers, administrators. We don't want to lose touch with this community of kids who may choose to stay remote. And I know the principals are committed to that. It's just, we've got to be able to have the capacity to provide the curriculum and the instruction.
Okay, David.
I wanted to talk a little.
David, wait a minute. VTVLC was tweeting in the last year that they wanted sending school districts like Wethersfield and Heartland to understand that they had an online high school program available. And I don't think that's cool. I don't think that going to high school online is, unless they're
right, unless you have to.
Unless you have to.
Right.
So, high school choice. I don't feel good about that as a school board member. So I'm urging lots of caution. Thank you.
No, that's good. And I think that I wanted to speak a little bit to the high school program, and I see that our two high school guidance counselors joining us today, because they're very interested in the plan and in sustaining the plan, because they've been working really hard to put new student schedules together. We had to change some things. That's the bottom line, because what's going to happen at Windsor High School, and this is different than Champlain Valley Union. It's different than Burlington High School. It's different than Woodstock. Everybody's having to create their own plan, which is the insanity of this. But what we're doing at Windsor is we wanted to make sure we embedded the integrated, project-based interdisciplinary piece. So a part of the morning will be the high school in teams with cadres of kids, or pods as we call them, doing that kind of work. But then there will also be a couple of in-person classes, biology, chemistry, algebra, that we'll offer to students in the morning as well, in person. And then when students leave at 11 and get home, we'll start another online session of classes starting around 1 o'clock that'll be totally online. And what we're hoping to do, and I think the school counselors are hoping to do, is to disaggregate the kids so that we can we know the kids that really fell through the cracks last year with remote learning. And so we're going to try to get as many of those courses scheduled into in-person learning as we can, knowing that there'll have to be some online learning. And this speaks a little bit to what Beth is saying. High school is different than middle school, is different than elementary school, but each of the plans has to match the developmental age and it also has to match, all those health and safety requirements. So I just want to give both Jessica and her counterpart Greg tonight a lot of credit, because they've worked a lot of hours outside of their contract to help put this high school piece together. And it's very complicated. It's not done. Colleen and Kate have been very instrumental in helping with that. But that's a whole other piece of organization that has to happen. And my understanding is, I don't think Hanover has released their plan yet. I don't think Hartford has released their plan yet. I think they're in dialogue. But I mean, what I'm most proud of is that there were lots of voices at that table. Maybe not all the voices that should have been at the table, but there were lots there. And again, I think there's generally a fair amount of support for the plan. Angie, did you want to say something? I saw you leaning forward.
I was just trying to let Amy know that Nikki has had her hand up for quite some time. And I know with this many people, she might not even be seeing her.
Yeah, I wasn't seeing her. So Nicole, go for it.
So this is one of my wild, somewhat harebrained ideas, although I don't think it's very harebrained. So one of the concerns that I've heard from a lot of the parents is that, shaping this picture here, is that the remote learning last year was a bit of a train wreck. And my personal opinion is that I would be absolutely blown away, and I'll go on record at this. If we make it to October in school, I will be absolutely shocked. And so I feel like we're going to have a situation where the entire supervisory union is back to remote learning by October. And I love the plan that we have, and my kids are going to go, but I would, one, hate to see we lose 25% of our kids to the
VTBLC. Yep.
Yeah, I would hate to lose those kids for 4 weeks and then go to remote learning as a school or an SU and have lost those kids because they're stuck in that program now for the duration. So that's one of my concerns. And then another one of my concerns is that our teachers aren't trained for virtual learning. And that showed through loud and clear. Some teachers nailed it and some teachers absolutely bombed it, and it was a train wreck. And I don't want, personally, I'm not going to let my 9-year-old sit in front of a computer for 4 hours a day again. And so I think that we need to have a curriculum that we can immediately push out to our parents and say, this is what you do. Your kid doesn't have to spend 5 days with the computer in front of them. You know, maybe they have a class meeting once a day. We already have this curriculum. We're ready to go, and just go with it. And to find a curriculum that meets, like Angie, at the end of the Heartland meeting, Angie had talked about some curriculums that were project-based that kind of met the goals of the supervisory union. And I think that this is harebrained in that our teachers, I know our teachers have great hearts and they want to teach things that they have always taught, and they have a plan for what they want to do. But I just kind of wonder if this is the year that we just say, we're buying a curriculum, you use it, and off we go. So there's my idea.
Yeah, and I think there's still plenty of time. Well, let me back up. Not plenty of time, but I think there's still time, you know, as we investigate these options, to maybe make those decisions. The problem, and Angie, maybe you can speak to this, and this did come up at the Heartland meeting, is that the one or two that we found that were project-based, consistent with our philosophy, moving us forward, were incredibly expensive. And they were anywhere from $800 to $1,000, you know, per student. Maybe there's something cheaper than that. Maybe. I also remember at one point, I think, Nikki, you said that, you know, but I think this is going to be very discriminate against who the parent is. But can you just send the 5 reading standards and the 5 science standards and the 5 math standards, and then let the parents sort of create it? I think some parents could do that. I think other parents could not. So I think this decision has to be carefully thought about, and there are also financial implications of of going ahead and buying a curriculum. I'm not opposed to it. I just think the board, there's another example, has to have our back on that one.
Yeah, so to counter some of those, I did run some of the numbers, and I think that we said that within the supervisory union, we're short something like 15 paras, and I ran the numbers, and that comes pretty close to being able to buy a curriculum to use it. And so it does feel like there's an offset there. And I worry about just sending the teachers the standards and saying, run with it. But if we have a curriculum that's already been vetted for homeschooling, where the parent just gets their instruction manual on Monday, and I don't expect that all parents are going to do that. I expect that teachers, if there's reading to be done for fourth graders, I expect that teachers are going to log in and read for an hour to the kids, assuming that maybe the parents aren't. Like, there's going to be some interaction. There's going to have to be some flexibility. But we are going to lose so many families so quickly if we go to the remote program that we had in the spring, because there are so many families that are anti-screen time, and that remote program was 100% screen time with no movement and just no options. So.
Any other thoughts on that? I think anybody else want to weigh in on that, Colleen?
I had to find my mute button. Is the Vermont curriculum not as good? Is that what we're saying? The online curriculum that they offer?
I don't know. I have not looked at it.
And then if we did do this, would we try to stay? Would the teachers try to stay in sync with that online programming in school, so that if kids are back and forth, you just kind of stay?
No. So the way that it works, Colleen, is that parents have to commit to a semester for their kids, because that's a reasonable stopping time. So whether we're in or remote, they have to commit to a semester long course. So that means they have to take, they have to take those courses. There is some choice in those courses for the middle and high school, but I think the coursework for the K-5 is pretty prescriptive, based on an elementary program with core courses: math, English language arts, science, social studies, health. And the teachers have to have a year-long commitment to it. So if they're teaching remote, if they're teaching for Vermont Virtual Learning Cooperative, they're not coming back to teach for us. They're teaching for Vermont Virtual Learning Cooperative. Right. We're paying their salary, and we get the benefit of having so many students, the program available for so many students.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
And I think some of that would speak to what Nikki's saying. I mean, because what I'm hearing Nikki say, regardless of who did a great job last spring or who didn't, I mean, that came on us within 24 hours. I mean, I understand what Nikki's saying. Some hit it out of the park, some, bunted, whatever. But the bottom line is, I think what Nikki's talking about is a curriculum that doesn't include 4 to 5 hours of screen time per day, because a lot of the parents, I think, by the end of the spring, were sick and tired of the screen time. And I think that's what we've been trying to figure out, is how can we do this with more integrity and less screen time as we move forward. I did see Katie Ahern's hand go up, and it was probably, I'm going to let Katie speak for herself, but the idea of how many paras need to be hired and could that be an offset? I think we have to be careful of is we have very few regular ed paraprofessionals. Most of them are specifically special education related, and just because you've got an online program, those services don't go. I'm not saying we couldn't do that offset. We might be able to do some of that offset, but I think we'd have to really do a real thorough look at that. Katie, I don't know, Amy, if you can see everybody, but Katie had her hand up. Katie Ahern.
No, I can't see everyone, so go ahead, Katie.
Thank you, Amy. Part of it was about the para piece. We actually don't have 15 openings anymore because I've spent the past 10 days interviewing people like you can't believe, which is a plus. I can say that many of the HCRS staff that we had are being replaced by internal hires, and we have some absolutely fantastic hires. So we're going to see a cost savings there, and as well as every principal sitting here and anybody I can't see everybody either. So I think everyone's here has actually worked on consolidating the adults and figuring out some really creative ways to meet students' needs. So I'm not sure about the cost offset that, but I can say, Nikki, I wanted to speak a little bit to the curriculum. I know from families that I've heard from, if they're thinking about staying home for reasons, not because they, for health things that Angie had brought up, they are asking though, what is the district going to do for curriculum for our children, especially our children in special education? And that gets messy because if they're homeschooled, it's not technically special ed's responsibility. There's a whole difference if you're on an IEP. But if we're providing curriculum, then we also then can provide the supports and instruction, which would be virtual. I will put that plug out there. But trying to find the balance of what we can offer, and whether it's with the Vermont Learning, whether it's someone else, I think it's important that we, and I've done a whole change of this since the very beginning. It's taken a while of just listening to people and trying to figure out the balance, how we can do it so we don't lose students, we don't disenfranchise parents, and we also don't have kids in front of a screen, especially the younger ones, all day. I agree with you on that. And it did not work for everyone. It worked for some more than others, but I hear it a lot of it. So I'll be quiet at this point. I don't know. There were several hands up. And I don't know. I was thinking, Amy, also maybe if people don't think they're being seen, because I think there's over 30, maybe they put their name in the chat of my hands up. You can do it on, what is it, the Google Meets one, or not the Google Meets, the Microsoft one or whatever. You can raise a virtual hand. I don't know if that might.
Yeah, not on this one. They would have to put their name in chat saying, "Can I ask a question?"
Yeah.
Again, I really want to thank all the folks who have been working so hard on this. It's a work in progress, but you can see why Bridget Neeson wrote that letter to her community, over the weekend. I mean, it's so complex, and you don't want to leave anybody behind, but in the meantime, you've only got so much capacity and knowledge around what to do next. I think if anything can come out of this, as Colleen or somebody indicated, I mean, one of the things I would love to have come out of this is that, in accordance with some sort of a motion, that in accordance with the governor's order, the executive committee in consultation with the superintendent, is authorized to make, final decisions about the opening or closing of schools, sort of pulling that plug. I think the other piece around the integrity of the opening, I think there's still room for discussion there. We're going to meet with the VTVLC person tomorrow morning. We're going to see what that offering looks like. We have not looked at the K-5 curriculum. I've seen some of the high school curriculum, but I think we need to take a look at that. Maybe bring that option back to a small subgroup of this group, just to see. I know, Nikki, this has been a passion for you. Maybe we can take a peek at that. I think we can also then look at cost offsets for buying. There are some great project-based curriculums out there that we could provide to families. But again, it will be an expense, and we need to look at those offsets. I see Angie has her hand up.
Is it okay?
Report, Angie.
Yep. I do want to say Vermont Virtual Learning Cooperative has their own timeline, and they'd like us to have names to them by Friday, as in July 31st, or next week at the latest Wednesday. They're doing their planning. So yeah, we have some work to do. So I'm saying that
We have some work
it
to
was
do.
good intentions to ask people, but we just simply might not have the time to get people together for that. Just saying.
Right. So we may have to make some decisions. And of course, it's always by choice. We can't force a kid. I don't think we can force a kid into VTVLC, right? I mean, I think it has to be a parent choice, but we can offer it, offer versus serve, as they say in the business. And that could be one of our offerings. Then we could maybe have another possibility around what Nikki's talking about, if we can find a way to support that.
Okay, I have 2 questions from the chat. First one is from Elizabeth. Is there a plan to have online parent forums about this?
About the homeschooling aspect of it, Elizabeth, or the whole plan?
What I meant was not seeking input per se, actually just having a walkthrough with parents of what the plan is, and it for each district as well, and or the supervisory union. Just wondering.
Yeah, well, I know that the principals have done an incredible job of putting together. Christine put the template together, then the other principals have used that template for a PowerPoint as they sort of walk their staff through the plan. I mean, maybe that we can talk about that at our administrative team meeting. And I think there might be a way. I think those would be best done by building, because there are so many individual decisions around, pick up and drop off and health checks and stations and isolation room. And, that I think that might be best done by building. And I think, I don't want to put the principals on the spot, but I think we could certainly do at least a forum per district, if not a couple of those. We can talk about that in the morning. I think it's a great idea, Elizabeth.
Okay, the other question is from Colleen Spence. Has the reopening committee taken a stab at metrics they might use for deciding whether to reopen or not? Or has the state given guidelines?
No, Colleen, that's an excellent question. And I think that was the essence of Bridget Neese's letter to her parents, right? That no, the state has not given us metrics and they have not given us guidance. Is it one case, 2 cases, no cases? 50% of your kids want to go, but 50 don't, 20%? Those metrics aren't there. And that's what's making this so complicated, is that you have to sort of make up your own metrics and have your own design, which is why I'd like a small subgroup, the executive committee or whatever, to help me through that decision making as we go through the next month, because we're not going to meet as an SU until probably 3 or 4 days before school begins. So I think that the board chairs could really serve as an authority body if this board so stipulates in a motion.
Okay, Beth Carter, did you have your hand raised?
No, Amy, I was just typing it into the chat box, but it kind of goes back to, I think, what maybe Katie said, or somebody asked about or Elizabeth actually asked the question about the parent forums. And then it goes back to what Jen Meager asked. I don't know if she's still on at the beginning of the call, because she got in late, is right at some point, right? Quite frankly, those forums should be in person, as should these be, because we're bringing the kids back to school. We all need to be back in person. So I guess, right, there's an inconsistency in our approach here, and we need to be a little bit more consistent in that, that's our plan.
Perfect point.
Right.
But I'm telling you, that's exactly the point, Beth, that we're going to be gathering somewhere between 750 and 850 human beings back into the Windsor building. But, we're all still meeting remotely. I mean, I don't, this is the part that keeps me up at night, and it keeps Bridget Neese up at night, and Zach McLaughlin down in Springfield. And, it's like we're all talking about it as if it's surreal, or it's something that's going to just happen in the future. But I don't know. I don't know how comfortable people would feel about in-person forums. I'd feel a little nervous about gathering adults, without health checks at the door. We're going to have those when we go back to school. Do we have those before we have a forum? I don't know.
So David, right. I disagree. I respectfully disagree. We all go to the grocery store now is what I guess, or we all go somewhere to get something. We all wear our masks. We all socially distance. Do I think you should have one big forum? No, but I think there should be options. I mean, we are all doing it now, right? With our masks on, is my assumption. So to think, again, that goes back to my discussion earlier about the high school students, to think that this isn't all happening now as we speak and sit here, right? We're foolish to think, right, that people are not gathering in, right, pods of 10, 15, 20.
There's only one little caveat to your logic, Beth. Yes. And that is that when I go in the grocery store, I'm considered a transient transmitter. Yes. I'm in and I'm out. I'm not in a room, and there's something to be.
You can do it outside or in a large auditorium or something like that. And you can opt in or opt out, right?
Yeah,
right. So it's just something to consider.
No, I get it. There's just science around exposure, and that's critical, and that's part of what has us nervous about opening buildings too. But I hear you.
Robin has a question.
Yes. Hi, everybody. I'm here at the Weathersfield School with Sean. We each had our separate technological difficulties and both arrived here. We arrived late. We came in on the very last slide from the survey. So I might be asking a question that's already been covered. But I did hear a lot about the, a couple hours a day, 5 days a week doesn't work for a lot of working families, etc. And my question is mainly around the science behind this decision. I've heard a lot of science around things like a week on, a week off, because it gives you 9 days for symptoms to show up with your cohort and you're alternating those cohorts. My daughter's class, again, would be 27 people. So I'm not understanding the definition of a small pod or cohort and the science behind that. And so I'd just like some more clarification on, I think what I heard, which is that a lot of people feel like it doesn't work. That's part A. And part B is, what is the science behind why it was created in the first place?
Yeah, Robin, we did address that a little bit earlier, but I'm certainly willing to address it again because it has been the number one or two comment that has come up, and I want to make sure I understand both. I understand this. Let me do the second part first. What's the science, right, behind a shortened day, right? I think that was your question, and how I answered that before is the science was not science around immunology or transmission. It was science around the psychological ability of the adults and the students to endure a length of time where they had to be socially or physically distanced, socially isolated in a pod, masked, and that was the issue. That as we thought through that, we didn't know whether or not we thought this was the way to start. Whether or not we can increase that day as we go along, that's fine. But it's just a matter of not being able to move them around the building, not being able to have them, interact, with anything other than the small pod. The science behind the small pod does have more to do with transmission, and it has more to do with contact tracing, right? It's in the guidelines. The pods should be kept small. They should be in proximity to the same adults every single day. They can't move around the building. They have to have a designated bathroom, a designated outdoor space, a designated indoor space. And so that's all part of transmission to a certain degree, but it's a lot more about contact tracing and whether you would have to shut down a small pod versus an entire building if you weren't in pods. So that was the logic behind that. Not a perfect science.
Scott has a question. Go for it.
Okay, thank you, Amy. Thank you, David. This is for you, David. And Ms. May, I hope this is the right time. I think this is what we're getting at after this discussion, as the discussion moves on. Could you explain to us what you need from the board and what kind of authority you have now? Say, for instance, to cancel school for a week because of a natural disaster or something like that. So explain to us what else you need from us, or what will you believe is the way to do in our communities.
I have the authority on any given day, whether it's a snow day or an electrical emergency, or quite frankly, a COVID emergency, gets to be October 3rd, and I think I have to close this pod down, or I have to close this school down. I have that authority. What I don't have is the authority right now, without the board giving that authority to me or some subgroup of this group, to not open at all on September 8th, right? So I need some authority around the decision to open on schedule, from this board, because that was the governor's pronouncement last week, that the board has the authority to decide whether they will open remotely or in a hybrid or in person. And I don't have that authority without this board voting for that. So I would need a motion to authorize the superintendent in consultation with the executive committee to decide right up until the opening of September 8th to not go back in person, basically. Right now, the executive order says without that, we have to go back in person.
Yeah, sorry. And can we make sure, right, and I know whatever that date is, David, again, we'll say it probably for the 10th time. Can we make sure that decision is one, right, if we need to do a K-8 or a school or whatever? I firmly believe the high school situation is different, so that should be a different discussion, different decision. And that's I know nobody else here seems to have as strong of a feeling as I do on that. No. But it's a different group of kids all together, different level, right? Abilities, capabilities, willingness, desires. So.
No, I think with that authority, Beth, would come the authority to make a decision. Is that K-8? Is that K-6? Is that K-12? But right now, when you look at the executive order, it says that all children in grades K through 12 will have some form of in-person instruction for the 2020-21 school year. And now they backed up on that a little bit last week and said that the board can authorize the superintendent, has the authority to change that decision. You have the authority to say, we are not going back in person K-8. We are not going back in person 9 through 12. You have that authority, but you have to vote that authority, or vote some semblance of that authority, so we don't have to whip this whole group back together again, but maybe just the board chairs.
Yeah, and that's fine, David, but then I want to understand, because there is a Mount Scottney school district that has a high school and the rest do not. I don't want all of these people voting on what we are doing in Mount Scottney because there is a high school. Yeah.
No, I understand.
Right. I mean, everybody should vote on that, but I have an issue with that. Right. I mean, it's one thing if, 80% of your kids go here. I hear you. I get it. Yes, you should have a vote. But if it's a really low percent, I'm not quite sure I really want your vote on whether the high school should open or not.
So the motion could be, right, to authorize the superintendent in consultation with the executive committee to make a decision on the opening in person of the K-8 instruction. And then it would be the Mount Scottney board that would make the decision, right? I mean, I think you could do it either way. I mean, your board chair will be there. I would hope Elizabeth will be part of that decision. She knows you have a high school. So I think that we could I completely agree with you, Beth. You could decide not to open for 9-12, but to open for K-8. I think that might not be a very good political decision. It's okay and safe for, because this decision will be based on staffing capacity, health capacity, immunology, the current state of the COVID virus in the Windsor, county. I mean, so there's going to be a lot of decisions that this committee will have to make. And this isn't about whether or not we can provide, childcare. That's a whole separate issue, really. This is about the authority to make a last minute decision based on look, we don't have the capacity. We don't have the buses to run. Right now, quite frankly, Mike, who is our bus coordinator, told me that he's got 3 drivers who are contemplating retirement. He may not have bus drivers, and they're contemplating retirement because they have compromised immune systems. If we don't have buses to run this thing, we've got to shut it down. You know, that's my point. And we're going to have to do that, you know, with a pretty quick decision. And I'd like to have the authority vested in the executive committee of this board, which are all 4 board chairs. And quite frankly, because of that, Elizabeth represents Mount Scottney, Amy represents the supervisory union. And I know this is not what you're talking about, Beth, but Mount Scottney will be represented well on that executive committee.
Can I ask a question? It's Angie. David, I wonder if you might be able to speak to the collective bargaining agreement and if you can, to the extent that you can, share the overall feeling of teachers on having one team of teachers be remote and other team of teachers be in person.
Yeah.
I think that has been a concern.
Yeah, I think the union agreement is it certainly has been a big part of this, and luckily we've had our union presidents from all 3 associations at the table, so it's made it a little bit easier. But Angie is right. Right now, they understand the ADA accommodation for a teacher to stay home if, in fact, they pass sort of the ADA test. What they would not understand, I think, and they probably would not support, and again, I know this isn't what you were saying, Beth, they wouldn't support a group of high school teachers teaching remotely while K-8 was in school, and they've expressed that very clearly to us, that either we all go in or we all stay out, and that's a pretty tricky situation, quite frankly.
Yeah, and to be clear, right, my recommendation is the high school is the one that goes back, right? Because those are the ones that can control themselves probably a little bit more and maintain social distance, right?
Yeah. They might be able to wear their mask, but
they're doing it already, right?
Although every time I wake up in the middle of the night, it's a high school kid I'm wrestling with in the library, trying to get him to put his mask on, and it's a big kid. I don't know who he is, but he's big. I'm going to ask Colleen someday. I'm going to describe him, and maybe Colleen can tell me who he is. But I actually am bear wrestling with that kid. Christine, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about what Beth is saying and remembering, because it wasn't that long ago, the challenges of having the younger kids home. I mean, it was in some ways easier. The older kids could manage themselves, and and there is science around transmission of kids 10 and under being less. You know, it's just there's so many.
It's a moving target.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and Christine, part of it is just right. Yeah, agreed. It's a moving target. Yeah. But quite frankly, the high school kids are already out there doing whatever they do now.
I know.
Nobody's stopping them. They're putting them in a school or not in a school. It doesn't matter because they're all cavorting, doing whatever they do.
Agreed.
We have the recording too, so I don't know if Diane's still on, but again, the motion I'd like you to contemplate is to authorize the superintendent in consultation with the executive board to make a decision anytime from this point up until September 8th to open to open school in person or to remain remote. And that doesn't mean we don't have a lot of work to do on what remote would look like, given Nikki's caveat earlier, but that's the motion we're looking for.
Is someone willing to make that motion?
This is Nikki. I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
I see Scott's
Chris
hand
will
up.
second.
And Chris's hand went up.
Yeah, I'll second. Chris.
Seconded. So
I'm sorry. What's the motion?
So the motion, Colleen, is to authorize the superintendent in consultation with the executive board to determine between now, you can put the date in there if you want, and September 8th as to whether or not we will open in person at any particular grade level at all.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yes.
Is this definitely an SU level decision, or because it just says school boards on the Vermont AOE thing? It doesn't say supervisory union school boards. So would this be a Wethersfield decision, school board decision, or definitely an SU school board decision?
Well, Ann, I thought about that, and quite frankly, you probably could argue it either way. The only reason why I think this board is best to make the decision is because we have a unified collective bargaining agreement and a unified calendar. The calendar goes supervisory union wide, so one district could not veer off and say we're going to open, the other districts say we're not going to open. I mean, it would just create an absolute union fiasco.
Scott, you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Amy. So I wanted to second that motion because I'm keen to talk about like the process, and I'm not a fan of executive board and superintendent teaming up to make these kind of decisions. I don't think that this context that we're describing is one that needs that kind of that doesn't need to be a necessity here for reasons of, for instance, speed, like an overnight decision or something like that. I think we can put some more thought into that, and I would prefer the superintendent to look to a broader decision-making body like this whole SU board. That would be my desire.
And why did you second?
So we could discuss it. We can't. David had it in his. David had it written, and we needed to talk about it.
Yeah, you need discussion. You have to have the motion to get it on the table. That's for sure.
Fair enough.
I'm just my only fear, Scott, with that. And so far we've done well. This environment and this virtual environment gets pretty good attendance. But God forbid if I have to make that decision and I can't get a quorum of this full SU board or any particular individual board. Maybe that would never happen. Maybe it would happen. I'm sure we would make that effort, but if we couldn't, we'd at least have this motion in place to expedite if we absolutely had to.
Well, I just looked over the policies. I couldn't find anything in the policies that allowed for an executive session, executive
board
committee decision like that. We had discussed this a lot at this SU board, in the last 5 years.
Yeah. Well, because we took that authority away, that's why you have to have this motion tonight. Because without that, the only authority I would have would be to get a quorum of this board together, right? We used to have a policy that gave a lot of authority to the executive board if you couldn't get a quorum together. But we took that policy out last summer. And you're right, Scott, we had a lot of conversation, which is why we have to have this vote tonight. If we're going to at least have the authority to do that, doesn't mean that we will do that. We can still make every effort to get this board together, but
that's really meaningful, David. I mean, this SU board got rid of that policy.
Yeah,
not on the books, and that's really meaningful to me. So I don't want to go backwards tonight.
I get it.
Are there any other Colleen Spence?
Hi. I would feel more comfortable voting on this after I heard what the process was going to be for making the decision. Like if we're not getting any guidelines from the state. I know we're getting some, but I want to know what the decision-making process is first. Is it possible that we could vote on this at the end of August once we know, more about how you're going to approach making the decision?
Yeah, we could. Let me go and see when the next supervisory union. The next supervisory union is August 24th, and the way our calendar sets up now, we don't really start school till the 27th. I think that's the new teacher. So yeah, we could postpone that. What I'm afraid of, Colleen, is that we may not. We may have some better metrics, but we may not have metrics, because the kind of decision I'm talking about is a decision that we don't have enough bus drivers on August. Mike's still looking on August 29th. We don't have enough bus drivers, or we have more teachers who, as they get to that door.
Well, right. If there's staffing issues, you're going to know more than we do about whether you can.
Right.
But if there's immunology questions, do you have that piece in place? Like I trust your judgment on staffing and the principals.
Yeah.
But
that's what I'm talking about.
The questions about, what's going on in the community in terms of the virus is the part I'm interested in knowing more about how you'll think about it.
Yeah, that's a good question. And believe me, we would not make those decisions around immunology. That would be, I would assume that would be a countywide decision or a regional decision based on cases. But the only authority I was asking for tonight with the executive board was more around staffing concerns, numbers of students who agree to come in. What happens if only 20% of your students want in-person education and you've got your whole staff in the building? That gets a little complicated. But as I look at the calendar now, we could table this until the 24th. It makes me a little nervous, but we may have more information. We may not. Remember, the state laid this on us just last week.
Right. We don't even know the full connotation of it in a way. Like no, I just I'm hesitant to hand over my opinion, and I trust you.
That's I understand.
I'm also feel responsible, so
I understand.
I would feel better about doing it in August.
So Nicole has a question, but just a sec, I want to read a comment that Jean Marie just put up on the chat. And then you're exactly next, Nicole. Jean Marie asks, can families wait to hear as late as August 24th? And you're up, Nicole.
So the way I read the motion, and David can read it back to us, is that we're giving the superintendent the authority to make the decision in consultation with the executive board, not that the executive board is going to vote. It's just that he's going to call the executive board and say, yo, can't do this.
Here's the problem. Right. That's what it would be.
Yeah. And so by making this motion, we're giving you the authority, and then we're calling together a quick committee for you to say, I can't do this. This is why. And then we report back to our boards. David just called and said he can't do this, and this is what he explained. And that's how I read the motion. And so I guess to me, it's not even a vote of this board. It's just a whether or not David brings it to this board.
I still think in the end, because of that governor's order last week, that the decisions to open in person or not rest now with the boards, as Anne Marie said. It's even confusing what they mean by the boards, right? It was a nice soundbite, and it was a nice sort of stance. And I still think it was partially to kick the can to locals to make that decision. But Nikki's exactly right. That's how we would do it. I would say, look, we're missing 3 bus drivers. We're just not going to be able to go on September 8th. We've got another 20 applications for ADA accommodations where people want to stay home, and I just got those yesterday. When we can't make those decisions, we can't go. That's what I'm talking about. And at that point, we could decide to call an emergency meeting of this group. But if this group, we can't get a quorum of this group, I'm sort of dead in the water. But I don't know. The whole thing is sort of surreal anyhow. So maybe we just let that happen.
So I just an observation. Since March, I think all of us are really hypersensitive to everything that we're hearing from everyone. And I think your ability to get a quorum at the last minute is pretty good at this point. Even though we're probably all about fried, we could probably meet very quickly. And Anne Marie says, I'm confused. I think what the order says is that boards need to vote on which reopening model we're following. And like Jean Marie asks, parents need that vote to be made sooner than later.
That's exactly right. But my understanding of that of that order is that we're voting on which model we are going to use, to reopen, right? I mean, that's the key. Not which model we're going to use once we are open, or which model we're going to use when we open. But really, to me, it's really an opening order. It's and right now we know that we're using a form of a hybrid model, right? But we know that we're going to do some in-person instruction. But if the board wanted to decide that we weren't going to do any in-person instruction, we have to have the authority of the board to do that. I know it's complicated, but.
Yeah, and I think in a situation like that we would all make ourselves available. And I think as we move closer into August, we're all going to be on pins and needles here, looking at governor press conferences. I mean, we're going to be listening to, as we all are anyway, where we're reading Vermont Digger to get the latest if we weren't able to listen to it. There's a Vermont NEA forum tomorrow for teachers and, well, for the entire public on kind of how the union is coming at this. We're all really aware, and I really think, David, that if you needed all of us, that we would be there at least within a couple of hours, or as quickly as it would need to be warned.
Yeah.
Chris, you had a question.
Jean Marie has a question, I think. I don't know.
Yeah, let's.
My question was.
Chris had one too.
My question was, what do we need to do to table this till the next meeting, which is already going to be before David's going to be faced with this decision. So we'll know a lot more in a month as to where things look like they're headed. Yeah. I appreciate that the parents want to know what's going to be happening, and I would say if we're all generally in agreement that the plan that's been created is based on where things are now, health-wise, and in hopes that they might get a little better, we can only plan so far as to health situations if they get worse. There's only so much we can do with that. So we can offer parents a plan based on what we see now, and that's what we're doing, and continue to survey them and get a feel for where they stand. And then we're going to have to act again in some way, probably at the end of August, unless we all want to right now declare that we're going to be all remote. No, and then that's a different plan, and that's a different, then everybody has to deal with it, and we go through all of that. But
okay,
that's
thank you, Chris. Yeah, Jean Marie.
Hi, thank you. I just wanted to mention how proud I am of the WSCSU task force, as well as the administrative team and David's leadership And I'm going to point it directly at something. So we've been reading as much literature and research. There is no weekend that hasn't gone by that we haven't connected in some way, asked questions of each other, sent each other articles to read. And today, our school board, I think it was Robin Tyndall, sent a 62-page report that came out of Harvard. NPR is talking about this article this week, and it's called Schools for Health, Risk Reduction Strategies for Reopening Schools. So I immediately downloaded the document and I read it to cover to cover. And what I would like to share with this board, when I was done reading it, I was astounded that there was not one thing in here that the administrative team or the WSCSU task force had not debated in a really genuine way, using research, using the information out there. So as much as, and I'm as tortured as the rest of you about whether or not we should open in person. I struggle with that daily, but what I will say to you, based on this report, all of the strategies that are coming out of, and I think Harvard is this study group, it's pretty impressive. And there wasn't one thing in here that we have not talked about in depth. So if we do go in person, all of those thousands of hours that we have spent as a team, working together, really thinking about kids and safety, by God, we've done a good job. And I don't think there's a stone unturned. Now, that doesn't mean something catastrophic couldn't happen, something unexpected that maybe Harvard hasn't thought about or we haven't thought about. But when I was done reading this, I wrote David right away and said, we are on the right track.
Thank you, Jean Marie. That's heartening. Very good to hear.
Yeah, the school nurses also got that Harvard study, and I've heard back from a couple of them saying that, you know, it is a useful resource, but they felt we were really in compliance with a lot of the recommendations. It's just a question of whether or not emotionally and socially the kids can step up to the plate. You know, maybe they can, maybe they can't. We're going to find out. But we've got to have enough adults. We've got to have transportation. We've got to have the right HVAC systems. The isolation rooms have to be in place. You know, so there's a lot of things that have to happen, and we may need to make some decisions that last week. But I think there's time, if you want to table this, the 24th, we could make another decision. I'm just going to hold everybody to the fact that if we need a quorum, we're going to need to get a quorum, because we don't have that other executive board policy like that Scott talked about. So it has to be a quorum of this board.
Are the people who made the motion and seconded, are you willing to withdraw your motion for tabling?
Yeah, you could do it that way, or somebody could make a motion to table.
I'm willing to withdraw.
Yeah, I'm not sure which one of us seconded, but I'm willing to withdraw it too, sir.
The 2 seconds withdrew, and Nikki would have to withdraw.
So that
her
makes
motion.
this, you know.
I withdrew. You just didn't hear me.
Nikki withdrew. Motion withdrawn.
Okay.
Great, thank you. And Anne Marie asked if we need to vote on the hybrid now. I don't know.
No, I don't think so. Although Colleen did state that would be good to, to certainly have a motion to support the hybrid plan that we've put in place. I mean, that would strengthen it some. I mean, quite frankly, the original, I mean, it's really up to this board.
I think that even if we don't have all the specifics about a hybrid plan, that parents need to know that we're either going to have one or not have one, or we're considering it or something. I don't think that we can come out of this meeting with no information.
So, Robin, you're talking about by a hybrid plan, you mean that some students will be allowed to learn completely remote and other students will follow the in-person plan. Is that what you mean?
Right.
Is that what Anne Marie meant? Yeah.
I'm assuming that's what Anne Marie meant.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
And I don't know that I don't know about the level of detail. Obviously, more detail is better, but I don't know that any decision has been made on whether it's the VTVLC or whether there's going to be a project-based curriculum or whether there's going to be conference phones and videos streaming live from the classroom.
We do not have a plan.
But at least parents knowing, especially since there's such a large percentage of them, knowing that something will be offered is going to at least help them know that they don't have to file for home study with the state. I mean, I think that's a big decision right now that parents are facing. There is on paper the August 1st deadline for filing, although I believe that that's not strict, but a lot of people right now are trying to at least do that first fork in the road. There's going to be a lot of forks in the road after that, but they need to at least know that first fork in the road is there.
I think I have a list of, obviously my last email to the community was the big reveal, right? So that happened. And then I have a series of topics for either follow-up emails or follow-up videos that I'm going to do. And that was number one or number two, Robin. That's going to, I'd say by the end of the week, we can get something out that indicates that our plan, because I've heard the board say, all three boards, that's a priority, that there will be a remote plan. I certainly said that to anybody who asked me in a private email, but I'm going to send out a general email blast saying that. It's going to take a little while to put it together, but there will be a plan.
Okay, thank you. So where are we? Besides 8:30 and.
Yeah, I mean, it's getting late. I don't know what would I don't have the agenda. Somehow I deleted the agenda.
Yeah, I figured this meeting might even go until midnight. So
yeah,
which is why I am where I am right now. But do you need us to vote on something, or we're tabling the authority part? And you have kind of a groundwork with the task force of coming up with a plan.
Yeah, I think it's really up to this board. If the board wants to vote, as Robin stated, this board is going to make every effort to provide a hybrid plan where some students have the choice to learn remotely. I mean, you could make that motion. It gives it a little more authority, and that'll help me when I put out my email. You just got to remember that we're going to have to really work diligently on what that plan will look like. The administrative team is working on that. That's why we're meeting with Jeff in the morning. That's why we've got some staff members who we think are going to be compromised enough to stay home. But I don't know whether you want to go on the record there without knowing the complete capacity issue. But I mean, I think you could say it is the intent of the Windsor Southeast Supervisory Union Board to offer a hybrid model that provides for some students to be educated at home. I think that's an okay motion.
And David, would that be until phase 3?
Yeah, unless yes, while we're in phase 2, exactly.
Well, it could transition us right to phase 3 too, David. I was probably thinking the same as Larry. I mean, we need a plan B for when we go, if and when we go full remote.
Yeah, that's actually phase 1.
Phase 1.
Phase 1. I'm sorry, I meant phase 1.
That's phase 1. But yeah, if we go phase 1, we're all remote, and we're going to need a better plan, as we talked about, and we've talked about that. But if we go to phase 3, supposedly it's all in person. No students are exempted. Everybody comes back to school. So that's really the complication there. That's as clear as mud, right? But I think in a phase 2 opening, this board could support a hybrid model.
Is somebody willing to make that motion?
This is Nikki. I'll make that motion.
This is Chris. I'll second. Way to go, Nikki.
Yeah, so the motion, just so it's clear to Diane, who will be writing it down, is the motion reads, it is the intent of the Windsor Southeast Supervisory Union School Board to offer a hybrid model of instruction, which includes both in-person and remote options for parents during phase 2.
Okay, so that's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
Yeah, Sean Whalen here.
Yeah.
What is the, I think it goes back to what Nikki was suggesting, is that we don't know what online instruction that we're going to offer is. And so we would be voting to adopt something that didn't work well for a lot of people in the spring. And I think what Nikki was offering was the question of, are we going to choose a curriculum that we're going to offer as that online component that's not something we're inventing in our SU, but something that's proven as an online option?
It could be wrong, and I'm just jumping to conclusions, but what we're doing with this motion and voting is because we haven't got the full plan of what the online is going to look like, we are authorizing our administrative team and task force to put together that hybrid plan and to let parents know that there will be a hybrid plan. I mean, we can do that right now, or it can be another thing that's tabled. Everything, it just feels it's so up in the air, then could change 2 weeks from now, but we have to go with the information that we have now and hope for the best, and then cross that horrible bridge when we come to it if we have to make tremendous changes. Chris.
I think we either have to do, I don't think we can table this till the end of August. I think if we're gonna table this, we would have to have another meeting in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
To see what the administrative board has come up with and things like that. Otherwise, I think we can just, my feeling is that this was a statement that would be giving our support to the concept, and let the, I think we, you know, the spring was a learning experience. There's no question about it. And I don't expect to assume that whatever occurred in the spring would be repeated is probably, God, I would hope that wasn't going to be happening no matter what. Since we know more and we have more training, we already have more training and more knowledge of what works, rather than trying to throw it together in a week or something like that the last time. So I would, that's just my opinion. We either have to do it in 2 weeks or do it or vote for supporting it now.
Okay, thank you. So just comments from chat. Colleen Spence has a question. I think the question is what makes phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3 designations. That's the level of COVID infection and community spread.
Right, and the governor makes that decision, right? And
yeah.
That's the governor's decision.
Yeah. Katie Ahern has a comment.
My comment's a little bit about the preciseness of language. When we're talking, and Larry mentioned it in the chat, that we already have a hybrid program, is this more about offering a distance option for families? And we should use that language that because as I understand it, we already we have a hybrid in terms of there will be an online learning component and an in-school component, and families are choosing that. But the question seems to be that what are we offering for a distance learning option for students who will not be physically in the building? And so maybe we need to go back and change the language from hybrid to distance learning. We've been talking about a lot, so that was my 2 cents on the precisest of language on the motion, if that's helpful.
Right, and Beth Roy brings up a very good point as well. Don't forget that a hybrid or distance plan also means a hybrid or distance school meal plan, and can we handle that? And there are so many moving parts to all of this, and repercussions to any decision that we make one way or the other. And having all of those parts moving in the same direction is just a phenomenal task. So does someone want to change that motion to say distance learning? And that we will have more information on that in 2 weeks from our administrative team and task force?
I'm willing to add the distance learning to it. Take away the hybrid and add distance learning.
I have a question about that, though. If we say just distance, does that sound like we're not doing in person? I thought the meaning of the word hybrid is that we're doing both distance and in person.
The plan already is hybrid.
Our plan is already hybrid.
Well, we have a hybrid plan, right, where there's some in person and some, but what I'm assuming this board is talking about is that there will be a 100% remote and a 100%, hybrid option, or in-person option. And that's what I thought we were talking about. And I do think there's a lot, I think it would be wise to maybe give this a couple of weeks, because this has a lot of tentacles to it. And I did see Beth Roy was the one who typed in, remember, a 100% remote requires 100% plan for how you're going to deliver food. Do we have the capacity to do that? I don't know. Does it mean that? I don't know. I mean, I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done on this.
It's not as simple as putting, and we could do this when David and I have talked about it. You could put like a separate Chromebook available, so the teacher can teach, from while one kid's at home learning, and then there's kids in the front of that person in the classroom. But it's not a panacea. A lot is going to be left out. A lot of the interaction, other kids are going to be talking at the same time, as kids tend to do. It's not going to be like it was where everybody was muted, right? Like we're all muted now. One person's talking at a time. It'll be like a live classroom, and that person has to hear the teacher. That's one issue. Also, there's other privacy issues where there could be, depending on how the camera's situated, even though it is a school environment. It's not as if you could just set up a Chromebook for 4 straight hours and watch a lecture. So just a heads up on that. I know I've heard that a lot, and I think there is a possibility to do that well for certain instances throughout a school day, but you wouldn't want your student who is home experiencing 100% remote learning just to have a Chromebook screen camera pointing at their teacher while they teach. It's not good for that kid. It's the same. You're still staring at a screen at that point.
I think the point of a remote learning is that it wouldn't be a screen, that the teachers would actually have to provide a plan for the students to be able to implement at home without having to watch a screen for 4 hours. It's a big lift. While
they're teaching an actual class of in-person kids. Yeah, see, that's the issue.
Yep.
So I I think that's what David was alluding to earlier when he was talking about the agreement, the master agreement, which I won't get into.
So it feels like we're right back to square one of so many moving parts that this whole group of people cannot make an educated decision on what we should do, and that we need more information, although I don't know that more information is necessarily going to help us. Having a plan based on the information that we have now, that there will be students for part of a day in class, and then for the rest of the day, they will have assignments to complete at home that won't necessarily have anything to do with screens, I think would be a marvelous plan. And I haven't seen any lesson plans that anyone has put together, but it's my understanding that that is what the hybrid plan is, that kids will be in school with a teacher, having some interaction, socially distanced, wearing masks, and then they will go home and they will do the assignments that have been given, and that wouldn't have anything to do with screens.
Yeah.
Am I jumping to conclusions there, David?
No, that's the plan. But what the administrative team heard from our boards, all three of the boards, is that in addition to that, they would like to be able to accommodate those parents who don't want to send their kids back at all, right? Do I have a plan for that? No. Do I think we have the capacity for that? I'm not sure. But we want to honor this segment of our population because we don't want to lose them. So we're going to try to do something. And I think we'll have a plan in the next week or so, but we don't have one tonight because we've been working on the in-person hybrid plan. And we have a meeting tomorrow morning with that Jeff from VTVLC. We are exploring other options. We're looking at other curriculums. We're seeing what staff might be available, if any, maybe none. So we do not have a plan to honor that board request. But I think you could have a statement that, intent is there. We know you probably don't need a vote. We already know the intent is there. You've made that clear to us, and we're actively pursuing options. And we don't want to let the board down. We may have to come back to you in the end and say we can't make this work. But we'll let you know. Right now, I think we've got some options, and we could schedule an SU meeting a couple of weeks from now and make a final decision with more of a plan. And
I know it's a lot to ask of our admin team and also our task force, but looking at ways to have the different learning units in the different classes, that it doesn't necessarily, an assignment doesn't have to be online.
That's correct. It does not. An online option doesn't have to include screen time. Right. I mean, a remote option or a distance option does not have to include screen time.
Right. And just having completed an online master's course. Yes, all of my courses were online, but I wasn't online the whole time. I spent a lot of time reading and talking to people, and so it's more than just sitting at a screen. And I think our administrators and all of our teaching staff is more than capable of kind of working together and not necessarily reinventing things, because a lot of them are already out there. But I think hearing more in a couple of weeks is probably good. Not to put Christine and Jean Marie and everyone else on alert, but yeah.
I have another comment. This is Robin. Again, I came in at the tail end of the survey results, but I think I saw the last slide saying something like 20% of respondents wanted to sign up for homeschooling and 60% wanted to stay at home. Larry's shaking his head. Can someone tell me what those percentages were, just roughly and quickly?
And Angie's got that.
I think it was 20% of those who said no. So it's not 20% of the total.
No, 20%. Go ahead. Angie's going to turn her mic on and tell you what, Robin.
Sorry, I need to put my mic on. I will send this to the board, and I've added in high school numbers. So overall, 63% said yes, they will send their children to in-person. 12% said no, but some of those responses were also, but if the school has a remote option, I would be interested. And 25% are undecided.
Does that make sense, Rob?
I guess I could summarize that by saying 40% is the total space, of which might be people who don't want to send their kids to school.
Right, 37.
37. Okay,
37% who okay, at least right now,
right,
are either undecided, right, or don't want to send their kids.
The crux of my question, which is that it's sounding to me like we're saying we're sticking with 5 days a week, 8:30 to 12:30, even though 37% of our people are potentially saying that won't work for us.
Well, that's not, we asked them why, and that was only one of the reasons. That was, I forget what percentage of that percentage said it was because of the schedule. Others said it was for health reasons, or they had a compromised adult in the home, or they had, you know, other issues. It wasn't just because they didn't like our schedule.
Okay, so my question is, are we re-examining that because of missing out on 37%, or are we saying we're sticking with that? It's 8:30 to 12:30. That's the in-person model. Case closed. But then on top of that, we're examining distance.
Correct. The latter. We're sticking with the 8:30 to 12:30, and we're examining a distance learning option. I mean, there would be staff revolt and union grievances, and we don't have staff members willing to spend a whole day in that building. We don't have kids we think that can spend a whole day in the building. I've not. Yeah, I mean, I think that's the simple answer. That but we do need a distance option, and we're gonna work on that.
David, Sean here. It just sounds like that's a very consequential decision for our families that's being driven by the teachers union, and it's the question of who works for who, because it's what we're hearing is that it's for the families that this 8:30 to 12:30 thing just doesn't work. But if it works, I don't know, if it works for the teachers union, that's one thing, but we work for the families. That's who I work for.
It's not just the teachers union, Sean. It's not just the teachers unions, right? I mean, it's the administrative team who you employ that are just, you know, it's me. I'm trying to picture a 7-year-old masked and distanced and isolated for 7 hours. I don't feel comfortable with it. I just don't. I don't think it's going to be a good option. You know, and we've got consensus on that task force, and I just don't know. You know, I think the people who have to implement this have to be comfortable with it. You can't have revolt with those who are going to implement. And I think the issues around parent and childcare are separate issues. We can address them. We can help parents, but I'm just not feeling a way that we can step back and do anything that's going to include more time into that day. You'd jump to, yeah. I mean, I don't perceive it at this late hour. I really don't. I mean, we have administrators on the phone on the call now. I mean, I've been at every single one of those meetings, those task force meetings. I don't want to make this a union issue. Yes, it could become a union issue, but it's not the union. It's our administrators who are entrusted to take care of our kids who are anywhere from the ages of 3 in preschool to 18 in high school. And we've looked at the developmental research. We've looked at the uncertainty about taking United States American students. We're not talking about South Korea or China where they mask up every year anyway. This is the United States here where we're going to have to get 7-year-olds to wear a mask for a long period of time, socially distanced and isolated from their other peers in the building. We just haven't seen a full day as a good way to start. A month from now, maybe we could start extending the time. There's openness to have that happen, but I don't, and if any administrators want to chime in, but that's been the feeling of the task force at this point.
So Robin asked the question, if the task force compared 5-day, 4-hour day to 1 week on and 1 week off and other models of in-person attendance.
Yeah.
And says, yes, Robin, we want to offer consistency. 1 week on, 1 week off was not user-friendly for families and their planning.
Yeah, we also felt that it was very inconsistent with the ability to lay out a curriculum and to follow a curriculum. It just didn't seem from an educational standpoint to be very. We looked at those. We looked at AB days. We looked at 3-2 days. We looked at 1 week in, 1 week off. We looked at all of those, and then we weighed the cost benefits with respect to the educational consistency and continuity of a curriculum. And it just didn't. And I guess we'll see how, because some districts are going to try to do that. We'll see how it goes. Our staff and teachers and administrators didn't feel comfortable with that. But
yeah, and I can see where the Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or Tuesday, Thursday for high school might work because they are preparing for college where they're going to have that. But for an elementary school child, for a parent to say, okay, you got to get up today. Nope, you don't got to get up tomorrow. You know, that kind of thing could get really, at least in my household with my kids, that would have been crazy.
I just have a quick comment. This is Beth Roy. I think, with all of these options, it's just totally overwhelming. And I think I have really high hopes that we will be able to extend our day to 12:30. The idea of an 8:30 to 12:30 day is, I don't know if both my husband and I will be able to keep our jobs. But I'm willing to give it a shot. We just need, it's going to be miserable no matter what we do. But I have really high hopes that we will be able to extend our day. Things are going to get better. It's just, we need to offer up, thanks and grace to be able to move this forward. And that's really where it comes, and it's really hard. I've been watching my 2 kids attend camp every day from 9 to 4:30, fully masked, and they don't care. They wear a mask all day through the sprinkler. It doesn't, they are fine. So I think it's harder for adults, I think, than kids, and they will learn and we will figure it out. So I have a lot of hope. I think we just need to figure out, because we will be on this call till midnight or beyond.
Yeah.
It's more, we just need to figure out this next small step and have faith and give each other that grace to move this forward.
Yeah. And I think, Beth, that's a very good point. And we've looked at those camps, and we've looked at the child cares, because they've all experimented to a certain degree, right? But again, they're experimenting with very small numbers. I know the Windsor Rec program has 65. I don't know how many kids at the camp where you are, but it's really looking at all of those things and seeing, maybe after the first couple of weeks, the staff will relax everything will be fine. The environment looks better, and we extend it an hour, and then maybe we extend it right till the end of the day. Maybe it'll work. I don't know. I can't predict it, you know. And I think this was just a way to start slowly and open slowly, and make sure that everything is copacetic.
Okay, I think it is time to move on. We will have a meeting in 2 weeks where the only item on the agenda is going to be the opening plan, and there will be a plan that we can all look at.
Yeah.
If that isn't too much to ask David and admin team.
No, and 2 weeks from.
There's a motion on the table.
There was a motion on, did you say there was a motion on the table, Scott?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's my motion. That we would have, I forget how it's worded, but that we would have a distance option for families.
Distance learning option, right.
And I can remove that as long as everybody feels comfortable that we can all say that we will provide a distance option. I just, the amount of funding that we will lose, even if we lose 10 kids to homeschooling, is more than we can afford to lose.
Yeah.
Okay, so are you willing, or do we want to vote that there will be?
I have a question.
Assistant learning.
Colleen.
Yeah, Colleen.
So you were about to restate it, so I may have like jumped in on you, but in 2 weeks we're going to hear about distance learning options. What our planners think is possible, and then in 4 weeks we're going to decide about. We're going to vote about who gets to call the shots.
Oh, whether we open or not. Yeah.
Okay.
If that hasn't already been decided for us by.
Yeah.
Right.
The other thing we could do, because I know this group likes to get together. Actually, 2 weeks from tonight. 2 weeks from tonight is August 10th, and there's a Mount Scottney board meeting. And the next night, a Weathersfield school board meeting. I mean, there's nothing next month. There's nothing next Monday on the 3rd. So we could get together again a week from now. And by then we will have met with Jeff from VTVLC. We will have explored some options. The administrative team is meeting twice a week. The task force is meeting at least once a week. We could have some more information on the distance piece, as long as reopening is the only thing on the agenda by the 3rd. Maybe, but I think we could.
David, it's Christine. I think that makes actually more sense with the VTVLC timeline.
Yeah, because they need to know like ASAP.
Right.
So if no one's opposed to that, we could have that happen or make that happen.
Can I have a quick question? Kind of what Nikki said. Do you consider the VTVLC that would be a remote option that the board could get behind, even though it may not be a Windsor Southeast Supervisor Union teacher, and it may not be a project-based curriculum that we have endorsed? Is that what you're saying?
I personally, that's my least favorite option, but it is something that I could get behind if that's the only option we have. Okay. The concern with that is that if we, like, I was Googling forecasts for COVID for this winter and fall, and it does not look good. So I really don't, like, my vision is that we're all going to be remote in October, and then we've got all these kids that are off taking classes somewhere else away from the rest of the class.
Gotcha.
But I will back it if I have to.
All right, just want to clarify. Yeah.
Yeah.
That the Vermont Virtual Learning Cooperative, just to repeat this, the commitment is that students will be in program for a semester, and they can't go in and come out, That's not going to work for them, and the same with our teachers. So we just have to be thinking about that.
That's why I think it's a huge downfall of that program.
Are the students full-time with that, or are they just taking one class or two classes?
That can be determined.
So we're not.
We've had that option at the high school anyway, to take classes.
Right, so they wouldn't be completely leaving us.
They're still part of our membership.
We keep the ADM.
That's the agreement with Vermont Virtual Learning Cooperative, which makes it what makes it appealing. But they would not be our students in the fact that our teachers wouldn't necessarily be interacting with them. If they were only taking a course, like say, for example, they wanted to get an advanced course that we didn't offer, or it wasn't working for their schedule, they can do that, and they've had that option anyway for the high school. So the elementary curriculum is an elementary curriculum. The kids would do. I'm not sure you can pick and choose on the elementary side.
Okay.
Have that same flexibility with it.
Yeah. So on the 3rd, we would have more information.
Yeah, we will, and we may have some other options, or we can discuss some other options. I know I keep listening to Nikki's plan, and I think I know what she's talking about, but I can't quite get my head around it. But we could spend some time on the 3rd talking about that, and then the administrative team could see if that's a possibility. I know I think Christine and Nikki have talked, so we could talk more vigorously about something like that. So I think we could. How do people feel about the 3rd? There are no board meetings on that night. Do people feel okay changing that to the 3rd? Anybody opposed? Anybody opposed to that? All right.
I'm fine with the 3rd.
All right. I'm going to send out. It'll cancel the 27th. We can put that one back in later. So you're going to get a new invite to the 3rd.
Okay. Great. We have to move on to our next topic of fun discussion. And
Jessica, the people who are on just for the reopening discussion, I mean, don't feel you have to stay on. Administrators, it's up to you. But thanks a lot for your patience tonight. I know you've put a lot of time into this too.
Yeah, thank you.
Because we have an early morning as administrators tomorrow morning.
Okay, so we skipped over. Did we have anything financials, David?
Ed told me that, and that might be maybe even in the 3rd, he needed another week to put the SU financials together. So, but maybe we don't want to crowd the 3rd with that.
Yeah,
but he could probably
we want to crowd the 3rd.
Yeah, but he'll be ready in August with financials for the SU. Yeah, and also for the individual boards, he plans to come and give you your financials for the closeout.
Okay, that will be good. So next we have Portrait of a Graduate.
Right, Angie can speak to that because the writing team has been working on the strategic plan, and we could probably give you the 2-minute overview. Angie's trying to find her volume button.
My mouse.
You got it. You got it.
It's not the most cooperative, and then I try to go really slow, and I've adjusted the settings on it. Anyway, it's not very precise. So yes, we are on the 3rd round of vetting. It's really more vetting than writing. The first round was looking at goals, and those were based on our Portrait of a Graduate and goals that came out of the work that we did at the end of that last meeting with the team identifying those areas. After the goals, we're looking at objectives. The language, objectives are more specific, like we will design a learning framework. And then the strategies are around the different things that we will put in place to do that. And so we are starting to work on developing the strategies, and we have about 15 strategies. I feel like I'm saying this wrong. I need to look at one of Mike's, one of the documents. Hang on a second. I will get that. Anyway, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to pull it up quickly. The work is continuing. We're noticing that we need to I'm going to be reaching out to a few more teachers to make sure, because it's coming down to about, as expected when you're doing work in the summer, about 7 or 8 people that are showing up regularly. And that's a mix of, we have a few parents and teachers and some administrators on the team. So I'm working to make sure that we have representation across the supervisory union for that, and across grade levels. So I don't know if there's anything more. That work is going to be ready to present to the strategic planning team on August 12th. So we have 2 more meetings to flesh that out.
Okay, great, thank you. So the next broad portrait of a graduate meeting for the larger task force is the 12th.
Yep.
Okay, wonderful, thank you. And Sean is commenting that we've asked community members to help with portrait of a graduate, but not reopening.
Yeah, right.
It's all, yeah, who knows? Thank you, Sean. Next up, we have our social media policy, which got sent out to everyone.
I think Bill made some adjustments to that, right? Or not big ones, but just
right. It was shared with everyone.
Okay.
So let me, can I summarize where it's at?
Certainly.
Sure. Basically, so I went through and just made a couple, mostly just technical adjustments to make it a SU one. Mark had gone in and made some pretty good comments. And I don't know, I didn't feel comfortable just kind of going ahead and making those changes. But I wanted to, I thought it'd be better if other people read some of Mark's ideas and came to consensus on whether they should be input or not. And that's kind of where we're at. Mark's, I had a couple comments, just a couple questions, and Mark had several things that he commented on. So that's where we're at.
Anne Marie, if you were to go to the agenda, all of the materials that were sent out by Diane, it's on there.
Anne Marie's trying to get plugged in here.
I actually just received right before this meeting, like actually was after the meeting had started, my acceptance to that email. I had said I had clicked on it and it said you need to get permission, and I just got permission like right before this meeting started, so I haven't had time to really review that email other than to click on the link to try to get up into this meeting.
Yeah, so that's the email that went out on the 21st of July. You only just got permission?
I have that. I have it. But what I'm saying is I didn't have permission to view the documents attached until just about, whenever this meeting started. But I'll look at it now, I guess, if I can find it.
Well, it's the first reading.
Yeah, you can do up to 3 readings.
And there are comments that Mark made that are along the side. And if in the second reading, when we meet next, we can comment on those and then put our social media policy together.
I have one concern. In looking over this document some more, I came to the realization that it almost requires a secondary document, not as far as we're concerned, but in terms of practice as far as parents go. Because when this document was crafted, the whole idea of online learning pandemic wasn't out there. And I almost feel like if we have parents of students that are working on social media as well, that we almost need some kind of commitment from them as parents that they will address concerns that they have with education system, assignments in a non-personal way towards a staff member. I almost feel like what we really need, as well as an agreement when you have parents signing up for distance learning, that they will communicate their concerns to the educator through a channel that can be documented by administration. It's a concern I have as far as, obviously you don't want to limit people's freedoms, and you're not interested in controlling what it is that they say or how they say it. But I think it's important that we look for a commitment to follow proper channels for a parent through the educators that they're expecting to educate their children.
Right. And that could be considered a procedure. And if we were to adopt this policy, we can ask our administrative staff, aka David.
Because David needs something else to do.
To develop the procedures for that. And we already have procedures of how parents are to bring something forward, that they start at the lowest level with the teacher, and then it goes to the principal, and then the superintendent, and then to the board. So that's already in place, if that's what you're, good. Yeah, I mean, that is across the board for anything with the school, any class, any policy, is that it's brought at the lowest level that that it can be solved.
Okay.
If it's not solved at that level, then it moves up.
I know in terms of this current situation we find ourselves in, that most of us kind of ignore that sort of thing until all of a sudden we've got something we have to do. And then I don't want to see staff members being attacked online forums without going through the proper channels. But it sounds like this pathway has already been laid out. Thank you.
Right. And what we have also found, I mean, since Facebook was invented, is that there are going to be people in our communities that go directly to Facebook, and it goes direct, it explodes. And then we have something that we have to deal with. So it doesn't matter what we had in policy, that sort of thing is going to happen, unfortunately.
Right. I think it's reasonable for educators and administrators to expect a commitment, as we have to change everything as far as the education of the kids.
Thank you, Mark. Did anyone else have any comments from what you read? I guess in the next month, if you can look over Mark's comments, make some of your own. Also, I don't know if we want to have maybe one person from each district look at this and be kind of a subcommittee instead of all of us trying to put this into a semblance of a policy.
Well, I've gone through it fairly recently, And so I'd be willing to continue with the representative of the Ascutney board.
Okay, Mark?
I'm still in. Bill's been nice to me. I'll stick around.
I'll shoot you an email out to the Heartland board and figure out who wants to join, and we'll.
Okay, that'd be great. And then if that person could get in touch with Mark and Bill, and they can have they could maybe even meet in a field and do social distancing. And have a paper copy so that they're not even looking at screens.
Hey,
Wi-Fi when you have that, you know?
excuse me, Amy.
Yes, Scott.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Amy. So this, you jogged my memory about something, so I went back and looked at it again. And so we're trying to work on this. So something to think about. Why is there why is page 7 specifically use the word procedure? And why is there a procedure inside of a policy? So that seems odd to me. And I think that's what we were just talking about. So let's.
Yeah, so that's on page 7.
Right.
Oh, procedures for social media. So that could be something that this subcommittee looks at, is to pull that out and to see if that needs to be not labeled as procedure.
Sure.
Or something pulled out and given to our admin team to create an actual procedure with that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Scott.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, that wouldn't go in the policy.
Jennifer Meeker wished to ask a question. And Jennifer, yes.
Sorry, my mic kept disappearing. I just had a question. I think, Amy, you said that the policy that was sent out to the board members, I assume, had some comments. Are those comments that you're willing to share with the public at this time, or are those only going to be addressed in the next meeting? I think, last meeting I had asked if I could have a copy of the policy, and you had indicated that a copy would be attached to the meeting agenda. And then it wasn't, so you kindly emailed it to me yesterday, but the copy that I received yesterday doesn't have any of the comments that you're suggesting are there.
Yeah, so it's interesting because the agenda that I'm looking at and the copy of the policy I'm looking at, I got off the agenda. So I don't know.
The agenda that's online,
yeah,
is actually the one that had the wrong call-in number for tonight's meeting too. So maybe that's part of the problem, that it's the wrong agenda.
Well,
or the wrong link.
Yeah, I just
for the meeting, because the pin number, the call-in pin number doesn't work, and the link wasn't working to get into the meeting as either. So I'm wondering if maybe the one that's on the website is different than what you folks are looking at.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah.
So I guess basically the question is, am I entitled to get a copy of that before the next meeting and before you're going to discuss it?
I wouldn't see why not.
Yeah.
I'll leave it to you to share, Amy.
Yeah, so I think I would have to ask Larry how to do that, because they're comments made by, I'm not sure how to send comments along with.
Okay.
Because I sent you what I have that has those comments on it, and if you didn't get those comments, I don't know how to send them. So I would have to ask someone else to do that for me.
Yeah, my guess is I probably don't have permission to view the document as you're viewing it, would be my assumption. But
yeah, I have no idea, because I sent you exactly what I have. So if Larry could take a look.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah.
I don't know if Larry is still on. I don't think he's still on, but.
Yeah, I think he left. So David, if you could ask him to do that. And at our next meeting, it will be, where is that? So this was the first reading, so there will be a second reading. At our next meeting, and that will be the later August meeting. We also were going to talk about the Hartford anti-racism policy, and I don't know if that was successfully shared with everyone. I know I tried to do that, but if no one got my sharing.
Yeah, Amy, yeah, this is Beth. I didn't see it come through in the agenda or the attachments.
Okay, because it's number 5 on the agenda. But I tried to share that with everyone, so I guess we will have to table that as well. However, well, I will send it. I'll send the link to everyone. It's interesting. It started out, I think, through the town of Hartford, but is now a school district policy. And it's something that we could talk about as an SU policy. And we could also invite the a couple of the policy task force members from Hartford who worked. They were part of a racial equity committee in the town as well as the school. And we could have them come talk with us and kind of discuss what their process was in engaging their town. Certainly given the current environment and events, not only locally, but nationally and around the world. So that will be something we can put on our next agenda, but I will send a link to that policy. Bill.
Yeah, I just wrote you, Amy, I just sent you a download of the policy in Microsoft, and it has the comments attached.
You mean the social media?
Yes.
Okay.
And so if anyone has questions and they want to read the comments that Mark made in the policy, then you could just send it to them.
Okay, I will do that. And Jennifer, I will send that to you. In fact, I will send it to all of the board members plus Jennifer. And I will also send out the link to the Hartford policy.
Yeah, and that has not been adopted yet, right, Amy?
The Hartford policy?
Yeah, that was my understanding. Somebody said it was?
I thought it was.
Okay. I heard it was still in like second or third reading, but we can verify that.
Okay, yeah.
Amy, it was passed a couple of weeks ago. It was like the day before our last Manistee district meeting.
Yeah, I knew it was in process.
They put out a press release about it.
Good.
Yeah, thank you, Elizabeth. So let me see. That was all on our discussion and possible action items. So around the SU, I think we've been around the SU all night long.
Yeah.
Would everyone agree? And it's really dark outside, and I have to leave this building. It might be scary. So let me see. Setting the agenda for the next meeting, we'll have financials. And we will have the social media policy. And we will have the Hartford anti-racism policy. And possibly someone coming to talk with us. And also more on reopening and where we are.
And that'll be the regular meeting, not this.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
That's good.
Our next meeting is only on the hybrid/distance
Yeah.
for
We're gonna-
reopening.
Yeah, for Diane's purposes, we're going to call that a special meeting on the 3rd. So that'll
Yes.
be a special meeting. Only agenda item will be reopening.
Amy?
Yes, Chris.
Just that I think the Hartford policy deserves a real good view and discussion. And I'm afraid if we have somebody come and talk about it as well, we're going to have so much else in the meeting,
Yeah, that's
especially
true.
since
Yeah, so we
reopening is going to be there.
Yeah. So we won't
I
have
think maybe
anyone
we
come,
should,
but I'm going,
yeah, push that to the next one.
yeah. So I'm going to send out the link so all of you can be looking at it between now and then. Write down your questions, not necessarily on the document because possibly not everyone will be able to see them. But write them down to yourself and then we can talk about that at our next meeting.
Thanks, Amy.
Oh, you're welcome. That was a very good what you brought up because our next meeting is probably going to be as long as this one, given the reopening and who knows what's happening. So, David, do we need executive session?
We do not. We do not.
Thank goodness.
No, after adjournment though, I'd like maybe for you and Elizabeth to stick around for a minute. I just have one quick question.
Okay. We can do that. So I will take a motion.
So moved.
And who made the second?
Hi.
Give it to Nikki.
Oh, I was definitely second.
Yeah, she got it seconded. She did.
Okay. So I think we're all in favor. Yay.
Bye.
Bye. Have fun.
Bye, everybody.
Everyone.
Good work tonight. Good work. Hard work, but good work.
See ya. Bye.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.
Thank you. Bye, Scott. Bye, Katie. Bye, Mark.
Everybody's trying to get out of here.
Don't forget to stop the recording, David.
Ah, good point. Thank you. Yeah, that's good. Good. I don't know if we,
Thank
okay.
you.